Welcome back to 100 Days and Beyond. I'm Dudley Peacock, and this is episode 24. Today, I want to make the strongest case I have for daily content, which is the case for compounding. This is a concept almost every founder understands intellectually, and almost none of them experience, because almost none of them stay in the game long enough to see the compounding curve start to bend. The reason most founders quit before day 100 of their content campaign is that they are looking at the wrong metric. They are looking at episode level returns. Episode 1, a few listens. Episode 20, still a few listens. Episode 50, a few listens. They conclude rationally that content is not working and they go back to paid ads. They are measuring the wrong thing. The right metric is not episode level, it is library level. And the library does not start to compound until roughly episode 50 to 70. That is the thing I want to walk you through today, because understanding it is the difference between staying in the game long enough to win and quitting a month before it started to work. In the first 50 episodes of a typical business podcast, you get between 100 and 1,000 listens per episode. The variance is high. Some episodes catch a moment, most do not. If you are measuring success by listens per episode, you are flat. The best day one feedback is usually social. A handful of comments, a few shares, maybe one or two people mentioning the show in a meeting. None of this looks like a return on investment if you are measuring it week by week. The founder who quits in this period is not irrational. They are reading the obvious metric correctly. The metric is flat. What they are missing is that the flat metric is not the relevant metric. While episode level numbers are flat, three things are compounding silently in the background. First, your total library of content is growing. By episode 50, you have roughly 30 hours of searchable, topic-specific founder voice content. That library is a discoverable asset. Every episode is now a doorway, and a new listener who finds any one of them has 49 others to explore. This is why binge listening starts to become possible around the 50 episode mark, and binging is the behavior that turns casual listeners into committed ones. Second, your positioning is getting sharper by repetition. The 20th time you explain your point of view on transformation, it comes out cleaner than the first. The positioning you would pay a consultant £50,000 to produce has been produced for free by the act of explaining yourself 50 times in public. This sharper positioning now leaks into every other marketing asset you have, and it compounds across your website, your sales conversations, your pitch decks. Third, the algorithms are building a profile of your audience. YouTube, podcast platforms, and search engines now know what kind of business you are, what kind of listener engages with you, what your show pairs well with. This is invisible machinery, and it takes about 50 episodes for it to converge on a reliable profile. Once it has, it starts actively surfacing your content to exactly the right new listeners without you having to buy ads. Around episode 50 to 70, something visibly shifts. Not dramatically, it chugs noticeably. Episode level listen numbers start to move upwards, not because individual episodes are better, but because the back catalog is feeding new listeners who find an older episode first and then come forward to the latest one. You start seeing comments on episode 65 that reference episode 12, which means someone has just discovered you and binged their way through to the present. Inbound direct messages change. You start getting messages from people you have never heard of who say things like, "I've been listening for 6 months." The 6-month reference is the tell. They found you around episode 30, have been binge listening ever since, and have now reached the point where they want to talk to the real person behind the show. Sales conversations change. Prospects start arriving at the first call, already having decided to work with you. The work of the first call is not selling, it is scoping. This is the moment when content goes from being a marketing cost to being a sales asset, and the shift is real even if the P&L has not caught up yet. From episode 100 onwards, If the content quality has stayed high, the flywheel becomes obvious. Your inbound lead flow is meaningful, not dominant yet. You are still running outbound. You are still running paid, but meaningful. 10 to 30% of qualified pipeline is now coming from content, which is 10 to 30% that your sales team did not have to source. Your brand has a specific character in the market. Competitors mention you by name. Prospects say, "I've heard you talk about this." Recruiters send you CVs of people who know your show. The content is doing marketing work, recruitment work, partnership work, investor work all at once with zero additional cost per use. Your operating discipline compounds in a second order way. The act of producing content weekly about what you do has made you better at doing it because you have been forced to articulate it hundreds of times. This is the most underrated return from content. You become measurably sharper in your own business operations because you cannot fake the thinking when you publish weekly. The question I get most often is whether the curve can be shortcut. The honest answer is almost never. Paid distribution helps a little. A boosted post or a few sponsored placements can accelerate the discovery curve, but they cannot accelerate the binge listen curve, because that curve depends on a library being available to binge, and the library only exists if you ship the episodes. Collaboration with other podcasts helps a little. A guest appearance on a larger show can bring a spike of new listeners, but those listeners only convert if your own library has enough depth to retain them, which again requires shipping the episodes. Ultimately, the curve is about the library. The library is about the cadence. The cadence is about not quitting at episode 25. And the founders who win this race are the ones who understand the curve, commit to 100 episodes, and measure success at the library level, not the episode level, until the compounding starts to appear. That's episode 24. Today was the compounding curve. Why the first 50 episodes look flat, and why that is the correct reading of the wrong metric. What the library is actually doing in the background. Content accumulation, positioning sharpening, algorithm profile building. What changes at episode 50 to 70? Binge listening begins. Inbound messages shift. Sales calls change shape. And what compounding looks like at 100 to 200 episodes, when the flywheel is obviously turning and you start getting returns you did not explicitly pay for. Tomorrow is the final episode of week 5 and of the 100 Days and Beyond arc for now. We are looking at how to convert the listener into a £50,000 client without ever selling to them, the show to shipping path. If this was useful, subscribe wherever you are listening. I'll see you tomorrow.